Hello, and welcome to TSO Daily Dose, and welcome again, Julia Fredersdorff, Artistic Director of Van Diemen's Band here in Tasmania. Julia, we've had you a couple of times on TSO Daily Dose now, and the last time you were here, you said something intriguing about the LECLAIR duo that we played, Op.3 No.4, in E minor, and you said E minor is typically restless in character. You remember it goes... let's see, you start, I think. Yeah.
That's the beginning of it. All of the keys that are chosen within a set of sonatas have very much a character associated with them. And the composers, even now, I'm sure it's not a mistake when a composer chooses a particular key. It's not just about changing it up. It's about getting a particular character, or affect, as we say in the Baroque period. It's finding the emotion of a certain key and then using that to guide the composition itself. What's really interesting in the Baroque period was there were a few factors at play, one being temperament, and I'm not going to go into temperament now because that's a can of worms, but temperament was the keyboard tuning at the time, and there were certain keys that sounded more in tune and certain keys that sounded very out of tune. So sometimes that was used as a compositional device. But also inherently keys have their own character. So for example, a violin is tuned in D, so that's kind of an open key. And then there are minor keys which have other qualities. And so it's quite amazing. It's something to do with physics, I guess, and the way that each key resonates. And then that informs the style and the emotional strength emotional identity of a piece of music. The other thing to keep in mind is that not only would sometimes composers would choose a key and write in that key and be informed by the key, but sometimes it happened the other way around. So, for example, if a composer is writing a requiem, they're going to choose a particular key. One of the best examples of a composer choosing a key to suit the piece that he was writing is the D minor Mozart Requiem. So he chose that key on purpose because it's a mournful key, it's a very dark key, it's a very sad key. The beginning goes... Sad.
Wow, that is sad.
So that's a really good example of a key of lamentation. Another key that comes to mind, which is a sorrowful key, is C minor, a good example of which is at the end of the Johannes Passion by Bach. It's sort of like a sad lullaby, actually, in C minor. It's a Rut vol, which actually I think was featured in TSO Daily Dose over the Easter period. It's a really beautiful piece. Starts like this. Very sad, but somehow also quite a warm characteristic.
Were these keys, people had written down what they wanted them to mean, or was it just taken for granted?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different interpretations. From the 17th century, there was Rousseau, and also Charpentier wrote down the key characteristics. And then in the 18th century, Mattheson, and there was also Rameau, who wrote all of the characteristics down. And so sometimes they're not the same, funnily enough, but there are a lot of correlations. When you're looking at a piece and wanting to interpret it, it's really useful to be able to see what the composers at the time meant for them to sound like. That's one of the few guides we have to inform any performance practice.
Oh, what about...
So minor.
That's F minor,
yeah,
which is Winter in The Four Seasons by Vivaldi.
Yeah, that's a deliberate choice,
right?
For example, because it's a kind of closed, cold You know,
And
there's something...
then there's that slow movement, what key does it go into? E flat?
It's so warm and comforting, isn't it? Yeah. So again, the contrast of those keys is really deliberate.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So E flat major is a very warm maternal key. D major, that's trumpets.
Yeah, so D major, as I mentioned before, it's the key that the violin is tuned in, but it's a very suitable key for trumpets and for just that kind of open sound.
We played LECLAIR D major.
Yeah,
The first time that we played on the show.
That went something like this, I think. Yeah, that one.
Yep.
So that's D major. It's very much the key of grandeur, it was sort of seen as a joyful key, an open key, also a militant key, and it's quite a grand key. So a really good example of that, I think, is the Charpentier Te Deum. So it goes like this. Yeah. So that's a very D major-y piece, very open, kind of almost pompous sounding key, but not always. You know, it's just it's a very particularly on our instruments, they're very resonant.
Right.
There's a lot of sound associated with D major. Noise. I can't remember which one. I think it might have been Charpentier called it a noisy key, even. Yeah.
What about G major? G major. I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Bach Brandenburg.
Number 3.
Number 3.
Right.
Yeah. In G major. Yeah, exactly. So G major was described by Charpentier as a joyful and sweet key and associated with tenderness as well. So I guess the Bach Brandenburg I would call that sort of a joyful piece. One that I think is a good example of that tenderness is the beginning of the G major concerto for violin by Haydn. It goes... It's a very sweet kind of character it's that major character, but there's a warmth
G
and a
as
sweetness to
Mozart
it.
G major.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a very sweet. It's quite a playful character as well. But yeah, so G major, very nice key on the violin.
We have one more movement of a LECLAIR Sonata. This one's in F major.
Yeah.
Which we'll play for you now.
F major, also a very happy key, a very bright key, also associated with trumpets. But yeah, it's a joyful and playful key. And I think this piece that we're about to play really illustrates that.